Today we are welcoming Simon Alexander Ong, award-winning life executive coach, business strategist, and public speaker. Simon, you are very welcome. And I would like to introduce yourself in more details, what you do.
Sure. Well, first of all, Elena, thank you so much for having me on your show. I look forward to understanding more about the work you do, but also hearing your questions that you have for me. So when I was just a young teenager, I grew up with the belief that success was defined by our job title. I believed that when I eventually graduated college, that being a banker, a doctor, a lawyer, or an accountant would equal success. I chose the banking route, but unfortunately my timing was a little bit off because I graduated in the middle of 2007. This was a year before the global financial crisis.
Yeah.
And the company I started with was called Lehman Brothers, which collapsed into bankruptcy just over a year after I joined. So talk about a very volatile start to your first job and career after graduation. So I quickly discovered that this career was not for me, and so embarked the longest journey that we as humans make, the inches from our heads to our hearts. And I've discovered, Elena, that it is never an easy journey, but it is the most important and fulfilling that we will ever embark on. And because I had previously understood and believed that success was linked to my job title, I used this time of going inward to re-answer those questions. The questions were, what did success mean to me? What did fulfillment look like? And what sort of impact did I want to have in the world? And that moment, in conjunction with awakening a source of energy that I'd never experienced before by really looking into what my purpose was, acted as a catalyst to what I now get to do today, which is, as you shared very kindly at the beginning, Elena, an award-winning coach. I have had the opportunity and privilege to work with the likes of Michelin star chefs, TV presenters, C-level executive, and entrepreneurs. A keynote speaker, having been invited to speak at some of the planet's most successful companies, and more recently, just finished writing my debut book, Energize, with the world's largest publishing house, Penguin. So I'm sure we can explore more of that journey, but that's a very quick summary of what I used to do, working in the corporate world of finance as an employee, to now as an entrepreneur working in the field of personal development and leadership.
Thank you very much, Simon, for sharing. It's such an inspiration. And I really like how you highlighted asking yourself those important questions. What it's all mean for you? What does it mean success? What does it mean to be happy? Because normally I would hear it from people in midlife crisis when they already in the maybe 20 years in their career, and then they realize that maybe it's not the path to take. So they start to ask themselves those important questions. So it's interesting that you ask yourself early on those questions and shifted from this corporate world to coaching and public speaking. And what I would like to discuss with you, how you built this visibility in this coaching practice and speaking, because it's a field where we have a lot of competition. And we know that coaching is a very powerful tool. However, it's so difficult to describe and to explain what can it do for the person, and specifically differentiate yourself when you communicate. How you built this visibility transitioning from corporate to coaching?
Sure. So I think there are three parts to this question. I'm going to each part in turn. So I think the first part is really making that transition from employee to entrepreneur, the sort of early steps and how we can go about doing so. The second is the coaching. How do I then start building the coaching business? And the third is speaking, which kind of leads on to a bit of branding. So the first thing I want to say is we are now in a world in which it has never been easier to start a business, whether that is coaching, whether that is a product-based business or any other business in which you are providing a service. It has never been easier to start. However, at the same time, it has never been harder to stand out from the crowd. Because if it is easy for everyone to start a business, by default, it means there is going to be a lot more competition. And so that means we have to approach business development in a very smart way, smarter than maybe our predecessors would have had to do in years gone by. So when I first started my coaching business, the focus was not entirely on social media or having a website or having a business card. Yes, I eventually had those things, but at the very beginning, I was balancing building my coaching business while still working a full-time job. And I think understanding that point is important, because I often get asked, Elena, should I quit my job and start my coaching business or start any business? And my answer is always, if you have sufficient financial capital, yes, by all means, go and do it. But that is not the reality for many of us. For many of us, if we simply quit our job, we stop our income. And not every one of us will have a list of clients ready to coach. And so what I did is similar to how I manage my investment portfolio. When you manage your investment portfolio, you don't put all of your eggs into one basket, into one stock. What you do is you diversify, and you have a number of stocks that you hold in your portfolio, so that if one stock doesn't do well, you are hedged by having another stock that may do better. And so the stock that was defensive for me was that full-time job that was giving me an income, and it was giving me the chance to build this coaching business on the side outside of work on weekends and weekday evenings. So what I was doing is I was going out, Elena, to networking events, to seminars and conferences where I could start meeting people outside of my industry. And I think the way that I started to gauge interest from others around what I did is how I responded to the question that we always get asked whenever you meet someone new, which is, what do you do? And you will get asked that question, what do you do? Now, what I learned early on was that I should not use a title. So if I was asked, Simon, what do you do? I would not respond with something like, I am an architect, I am an engineer, I am an accountant, I am a coach. Because I found out that if we use a title, people will very quickly judge what we do based on that title. So for example, if I said I'm an accountant, most people may think boring, or how do I quickly finish the conversation and move on to the next person? If I say I'm a coach, they may think, oh, another coach that I'm speaking to. So we tend to have these presuppositions about certain job titles. And so what I decided to do was to play with their mind. I delivered, I guess I would call it the equivalent of a movie trailer. So when you go into the cinema, before you watch the main feature film, you see a series of trailers. And if the trailer has done its job, then you want to come back into the cinema and watch the full film when it is released. Now, in this case, the full film is your product or your service. And so what I was focusing on doing is to eliminate the use of titles and instead give them a trailer. And when I gave them a trailer, I started to get responses, Elena, like, tell me more. How do you do what you do? How do you work with people? And that told me that they were interested in what I did. And when people give you those questions, you know they want to know more. Now you start showing them the next steps on how they can experience your coaching service. So to give an example, I remember when they said to me, what do you do? There was a group of 5 people surrounding me. And I said to them, because there are 5 of you here, I'm going to give you 5 guesses and see if you can guess what I do. So I transferred the decision of what the title I did was to them. And I simply said, everything that I do is built to energize people to see their world differently and to awaken their imagination of what is possible so they can live a better story. What do you think I do? And so what happened is each individual started sharing words such as, you're a speaker, you're a coach, you're a motivational speaker. And so they were the ones that were coming up with the titles, not me. And I think when we come from a very different angle that is fresh, that is story-led and story-driven, it gauges the interest in a very different way. It's like my friend who is a photographer. He doesn't say he's a photographer. He says, I capture moments that are fleeting and make them last an eternity through the medium of photography. Now, what happens is suddenly you're interested. So Leonard, that is how I started. I just started by dropping movie trailers every time I was at networking events, every time I was connecting with people. And then when they asked me what did I do and how did I do it, I would share case studies or I would share stories of clients that I worked with. And then I would pause. I would then give them the space to feel deeply heard and understood, and experience that very few of us actually get to experience. So I started asking the questions to allow them to speak, because we all love to speak. I just simply gave them that opportunity by asking, what are the challenges you're facing right now? What big dreams do you have that you would like to take action towards? How will you know that this year will have been a productive one for you? And I just listened to what they shared. I took on the role, if you will, Elena, of Sherlock Holmes. I just used their responses as clues to understand their world, to go deeper into their world, so that I could help guide them in my role as a coach through the power of questions. And then the last question simply was, well, would you be interested in exploring this further and to understand how you can begin making meaningful steps to making that a reality? Now, if we've had a powerful conversation, the obvious answer would be yes. When do we have that in our diary? So that is how I started the coaching. On the final question on speaking, I realized early on that speaking is one of the most underrated forms of marketing. Now, what I mean by speaking, it's speaking as we are here, Lena, on podcasts, speaking to an audience in person or virtual, or even speaking whenever you get the opportunity to do so in your everyday life. Because our ability to communicate is what informs the world of our value. Just because you may have the best product or service does not mean you have a great business. Because unless we know how to communicate and articulate it in a way that resonates with people, then we've just got a hobby. So for me, speaking is one of the most powerful skills that I've learned to develop. And I'm still doing it today, except speaking has now turned from something that was initially used as a marketing tool to now being its own revenue generation stream.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. I had a few notes to what you've said. First was about this uniqueness you are finding in what you do. That was example of elevator pitch. And I heard you saying as well that you have, I think it's your personal style actually, you have those unique serving points. Come back to how we met in Clubhouse. And I remember receiving a voice message on LinkedIn after that from you, and it was a while ago, and I still remember that. And I know that this is one of your signature things to build the connection and to do the things people would not expect doing. And you've gave some examples as well in your early talks that you find those serving points with the clients, like with the musician, you send him the playlist in Spotify. So that was the way to get him as a client. But you've done it because you like helping and serving. So serving is coming on the first place. So could you share a bit more about this strategy, which obviously works very well?
Sure. So there's two strategies I'm going to touch on. The first one is unique serving points. And I want to emphasize that because when we think of USP, we typically think of it as unique selling points. But I would want you to flip the script and instead of S for selling, replace S with serving, unique serving points. And then the second component is experience. And that is where, Elena, you touched on me dropping your voice note. When we connected on LinkedIn. So that's more to do with experience. So if I start with USP, which is unique serving point, That simply comes down to the fact that excellent customer service will never go out of fashion. And so if you can deliver a customer experience that is so unique, so personal, so bespoke to the individual, they will never forget that experience. Now, even if they do not work with you, because the experience has been so powerful and profound, they will either tell other people about it or they will share your credentials with someone else. So what I mean by this is a lot of coaching is to do with your ability to listen. Now, not just listen to the words, but listen to what is important to the person sitting in front of you. And if you've listened well enough, you will know what is important to them. And that is data that feeds into your understanding of how to best serve them. So the example you mentioned, Elena, sending a playlist to this music executive, now that was something I knew would resonate because he is from that industry. And so when you understand the industry that this individual works in, maybe their personal circumstance, do they have a family? Do they have children? Do they travel a lot? You get to know all of this information by giving them the space and the opportunity to share. And that gives you insight on not only how you can coach them better, but also how you can serve them better. And so that leads into what I would call the experience. Once you are serving them through understanding them, it helps you design an experience in which people just want more. Now, my experience comes in twofold. The first part is the experience whenever someone comes across your path. And the second is the experience of someone doing business with you. Now, whenever someone connects with me on a platform like LinkedIn, I would give them a voice message just to say, hello, welcome to my network, great to meet you. Now, for me, that is providing them an experience of who Simon is and what Simon is about to arouse curiosity to want to know more about me. And also it leverages one of my skills that I love, which is public speaking. I love public speaking. And so why not leverage that joy of voice on a platform like LinkedIn? Now, the message I want to share with you is this. Maybe speaking isn't your strength, and that's totally fine. You've just got to reflect on what are the things that come naturally to you and how can you leverage that? How can you use that to give an experience to people that you meet in a way that is unique to you? So if it is not speaking, maybe you are an illustrator. So I've seen illustrators on Clubhouse, for example, change their profile picture to a sketch digitally of a speaker that they resonated with. And I remember in one room, this individual said, could you all pull to refresh and you will see that my profile picture has changed. And we were all amazed because in the seconds that one of the speakers was talking for, he suddenly did a digital sketch of that individual. And now people wanted to find out more. They wanted to learn more about if they could hire him, if he could come to an event and do some digital sketches. But that's because his ability to illustrate very quickly was his strength. So we all have things that come naturally for us. How can we leverage that in giving an experience to others? The second part of experience is about your relationships with your clients. Because once you have a client, too many of us in business focus on the next client, on the next client, on the next client. But the downside of that is that by focusing on the next client, the next client, the next client, you forget to give the experience to the existing clients. How can you nurture and look after them as if they were part of a members club, as if they were absolute rock stars in your list? And when you focus on them as much as your next client, what happens is you start designing a referral system in which people cannot help but refer you to opportunities. And that is what I enjoy, Lena. I love thinking creatively about how I can serve my clients, how I can give them an experience that they have never had before, whether that is on Christmas, they're getting a surprise gift from me, when they've achieved a big, bold goal that they never thought was possible, they get a nice surprise from me just to acknowledge their progress and the fact they have overcome certain challenges that were standing in their way before.
Fantastic. So many specific tips how to. And what I hear there, because a lot of people, when they try to build their brand, they think it's about this ego system, putting you out there and showcasing how great you are. And we in Top Expert Brand Accelerator, we are not agree with that. I think that building the brand is really serving others, sharing your best ideas, impacting in a good way by giving yourself the space to connect with people, to build the community. And this is what I hear from you, that it's about others. And from the other hand, it's about who you are as a person. So it's a connection of serving others and being authentic in what you do. And this blend gave you the results that people are really attracted. So it's like this pull way of attracting people to your personality by being in a service to them.
Definitely. I mean, let me put it this way, Lena, and I think this will help the listeners. If you go out to the market and you tell other people, I am good, I am really good at what I do, you should hire me. Actually, people will be skeptical, because they will say to you, of course you are saying you are good and you are really great at what you do, because you are the business, you are the coach. Of course you're going to say you're good. You're not going to say you're bad. But when other people say you're good, so when other people say to others, you have got to talk to Elena, you have got to have a coaching session with Simon, then suddenly they become more interested. So when other people talk about you and share their experience, that is far more impactful than you telling other people how good you are.
Very good. And by the way, talking about what you share, I saw in LinkedIn, you have a very interesting strategy or mix of posts between posts where you describe about personal growth and development things, or share some quotes, but there are as well very personal posts. For example, at your birthday, you wrote a very beautiful post on learning what you've learned for this year, or on your wedding anniversary, you wrote as well, what does it mean, love? And it's so organic. It doesn't look like, something like we need to open the doors of our house, put everybody in and showcase everything. No, you do it in a really nice ways, because we can see your values in this communication. We can see your personality. And I think that's what works really well. So can you tell a bit more, or maybe advice to our listeners, how to find this unique voice, which will be actually interesting to follow, interesting to read?
Definitely. Well, I think, first of all, we all have a unique voice. And the reason we all have a unique voice is that your background, your experiences, your story is going to be very different to mine. Now, simply by acknowledging that, you already have lessons and stories to share and tell. What stops many of us sharing our unique voice is the mistaken belief that we have nothing to offer. And that couldn't be further from the truth. It could not be further from the truth. We all have something to offer, from the most junior to the most senior in any organization, and from the youngest to the eldest. I've got a wide spectrum of mentors. I've got a mentor as young as 19. I've got a mentor as old as 69. And now what each of these mentors give me will be very different. But I value them because their life experiences are very different. So for us to understand our unique voice, we must take more time to reflect on our life experiences. Now, what I mean by that is reflect on, well, what went well this week? What didn't go so well? What did you learn? What can be improved next week? And what stories did you come across that resonate with you? So you may have read a story in a magazine or a book, or heard from a conversation or seminar. Now, when you start journaling and writing these thoughts down, that's how you can start creating some fantastic content, because what you write down will be very different to what someone else writes down, because your life will be very different. The constraints you have, the lifestyle you lead, your working day, all of that will be different, which means the lessons you get, the insights you have will be personalized to you. And so you can go about sharing your unique voice by just documenting your learnings. And here's something I've discovered, whether that's on LinkedIn, whether that's on video, whether that's on any other social platform, we discover our voice by using it. And the more
Absolutely.
you use your voice, the more you discover the topics, the themes, and the ideas that you enjoy most speaking about. And at the end of the day, this is all experimentation. I am still learning. I'm always testing. You know, you will see me try lots of different content ideas. And the reason is because I'm always experimenting to see what works, what doesn't work. Does this align with me? Does this not align with me? How can I change it? How can I adapt it? And that's just me trying out different mediums to share my thoughts, because we are blessed with a multitude of mediums to share our thoughts, whether that is on video, whether that is through audio, whether that is through writing, whether that through illustration or photography. And so we've got these tools, and it is up to us to experiment. And through that process, we discover our unique voice.
Absolutely, such a great advice. And it recalled me, I just read the last book of Richard Branson, which called Finding My Virginity. The first one was Losing My Virginity. And this is exactly the advice he's giving, because he's journaling every day. So he takes aside 10 minutes to put his thoughts and process what's happening. And he's obviously someone who has many things on his plate. And he said, like, this is the inspiration for the blog post and for the book as well, just reading those notes. So thanks so much for sharing that. And maybe another technique, I don't know if you use it, I started using it recently, the bullet journal, because this is about that as well. So you plan your day, and then you reflect, aha, that's the one, okay. I know that's very powerful, but a lot of people kind of overlook that. And maybe there is as well this imposter syndrome. Who am I to share something, and nothing is really happening, but in every life, a lot of things happening. And if we find time to reflect and to process it, there will be brilliant pieces of content.
Elena, one thing I would say to imposter syndrome is good. And here's why. If you are growing, if you are developing, and if you are evolving, you will always have imposter syndrome, because that means you are doing things that you have never done before. And of course, you're going to question yourself. Now, I would lie if I said I don't experience imposter syndrome. I was spending the last year or so writing a book for the first time. And the longest thing I wrote before that was a social media caption or a newsletter. So going from that to 65,000 words was a big challenge, while also raising a child for the first time. And so the imposter syndrome that I had was constantly questioning myself, would this resonate with readers? Would people actually enjoy reading it? Would this sell well? Would people actually want to buy a copy? And I will not know the answer to those questions until the book is launched in April next year. But I just persisted, because I knew that this comes with the territory. Whenever you do something for the first time, you are going to question yourself. And that is good, because that means you are growing. You are moving out of your comfort zone, and you are trying things for the first time. And as a result, you are expanding that comfort zone. So when you move on to your second book or your third book, the process becomes a lot easier. It's like giving birth to a child. Being a parent for the first time, you have no clue how to parent. All of it is new, and you're always making mistakes. But by the time you come to your second child, suddenly you're a lot more fluent. You know how to look after them, you know what to watch out for, and you know a hell of a lot more wisdom than you had the first time around.
Absolutely. So we come back to your book later on. While we were talking about imposter syndrome, I would like to ask you a bit more about the challenges you've experienced in your journey, maybe failures and learnings, because going from like Lehman Brothers, then starting to be a coach, to being featured in Financial Times, BBC, Radio, Virgin Startup, Harvard Business Review, all the titles, I'm sure that the journey was not easy. So what were those challenges you've got, or maybe failures you've done?
Sure, I've had a lot of challenges, setbacks, and failure. And I'll share some of these with you, but what I've learned about them is that through those experiences, not only do they shape you into the person you become, but they actually equip you with the wisdom, the insight, and the skills to create the best moments of your life and business. And one of the very first challenges that I was faced was when I was 19 years old. I remember when I was attending secondary school here in the UK, and I was called to the headmaster's office. I was very anxious walking through the corridor to the headmaster's office, because usually you were called there for misbehavior or you had done something bad. And so I remember sitting down in the headmaster's office, and his first words to me were, "Simon, I want you to take the rest of the week off school and however long you need." Now, as soon as he said those words, I knew it wasn't because of bad behavior. And I remember seeing at the corner of my eye, my dad was out of reception. And the reason he called me to the office was because my mum had unfortunately gone through a tragic accident, and she was now in a coma in hospital.
Oh, wow.
Unfortunately, she didn't make it. And just a few weeks later, we were organizing her funeral. So that was the first big personal challenge that I had. Now, the reason I share that is because at that age, mentally, you are more prepared for your grandparents to pass away first because of their age, but never prepared for someone directly linked to you, such as your mum or your dad.
Absolutely.
And so that experience really matured me, but it also taught me, number one, how fragile life is, just how precious and fragile life is. Number two, what was most important, that the clothes I wore, that the electronics I wanted to buy, the things I wanted to do to look cool to my friends, those things didn't matter as much as good health and just simply being alive. And the third were two words: don't wait. Don't wait. Which is an extension of the first two lessons. And I realized that those two words, don't wait, can be, if we have the humility to listen to them, the greatest antidote to regret. So that was my first big personal challenge. And it wasn't until I got to university, probably around my second or third year, that I was more comfortable speaking about that experience, because I was in a university in which I was the only one from my school that went there. So nobody knew my background. So I suddenly had this opportunity to begin with a blank slate. And I felt more comfortable then to share that story. And then my next challenge happened, which was failing a year at university. Now you can imagine what it must feel like to go home to not just any parents, but Asian family members, to tell them that you have failed a year at university and you have to repeat that year. So a 3-year degree became a 4-year degree. And so that was my next challenge, is realizing that I had my first academic failure in life, which is very big being a Chinese student. So that was the next thing I had to overcome. But again, if I look back, that taught me how to go and network. That taught me how to go and build relationships. Because I failed a year, I could not go down the traditional path of applying for a job. I had to build relationships and network in order to get invited to interview. And that's how I landed my first job at Lehman Brothers in the financial services industry. And of course, the next big challenge and failure was the first company I joined collapsed into bankruptcy within just a year of starting. Even though I had these big dreams and hopes of what I wanted to do, it collapsed into bankruptcy. And so again, I was left reflecting on, well, what does success really mean? And that was the benefit of what happened, is it gave me this opportunity to embark on this journey to what I now get to do today. And even along that journey, there's been many failures and challenges. I remember when I first moved out of employment and into entrepreneurship and running my business, I had no clue how to develop a business. All I was doing was making it up as I was going along. And there was a moment for 3 to 4 months in which I lost the clients I was working with. Some had to move abroad, some wanted to pause, some wanted to cancel. And so I started off really well and suddenly had these few months in which I had zero income, nothing coming into my business. And so I was asking myself, would I need to go back into employment again in order to get income? Or should I just continue? Should I just see where this goes? And that taught me the importance of creating an environment around us that makes it impossible not to succeed. And so I started diversifying my environment with people who were successful in very different industries in order to broaden my perspective, but also give me ideas and strategies that maybe I would not have otherwise had. And today, I still face challenges. I still have failures. I still have setbacks. But what happens is that each failure and each challenge that you overcome, that helps your mindset, that helps equip you with resilience. And it tells you that you are someone that can overcome challenges. And that is the greatest gift that we can earn by facing challenges and setbacks, because it is preparation for the bigger things that we cannot control, such as COVID and the global lockdown last year. If we have built sufficient resilience, then we are able to navigate and tackle face on anything that gets thrown our way.
Absolutely. No, I think this is the great strategy to look at the challenges as a gift and ask yourself a question. If it would be a gift, what I can take out of it and use it as a fuel to progress and to build this resilience. You mentioned as well importance of environments. Can't agree more with you, because there is, you know, this saying that we become average of 5 persons we are interacting the most in our life, and the environment has capacity to either elevate us or downgrade if it's the wrong environment. And earlier you mentioned about the mentors, and I was surprised hearing this range of ages, because I know how powerful it is to have a mentor, but you've said you have mentors from 19 till 62. So it's obviously part of your strategy of building this environment. Can you tell us a bit more? What is?
Definitely. So we are in a world now in which there is a lot of emphasis on diversity. Now, as soon as I saw the importance of diversity, for me, it is not just about gender and race and religion. Those are the easy things that we think about when we see the word diversity. But for me, diversity is also important in the sense of your age, your experience, your industry, and your goals. Because what that helps you with is by having diverse inputs from people from different backgrounds across all those categories, you begin thinking differently and more innovatively. And that is how innovation happens. If you always spend time with the same people, how can you be innovative? You're going to think like they think. But if you are able to blend lessons or insights or wisdom from, in my case, whether it is a film director, whether it is a global speaker, whether it is a video editor who's 19 years old, whether it is someone who is a musician, whether it is someone who's a tech entrepreneur or a social impact entrepreneur or someone that heads up a charity, what happens is you're going to have a powerful channel of ideas that you can blend with your own. And the reason I choose young people as well as old is because, as I said earlier, we live today in a society in which it has never been easier to start a business. So that means we have 6-year-old kids who are making millions on YouTube reviewing toys. We have 19-year-olds who are CEOs of companies. We have 65-year-olds who are still working, traveling the country, speaking on stages based on experience. Now, this tells us that unlike history, in which people would not have got these skills until they were older, we now have the ability to learn these skills through the power of the internet at whatever age. Age does not matter today. If you have a connection to the internet and you're willing to learn, you can build your skills. And so for me, the way I work with a 19-year-old is to understand, well, what social media are they using? How are they using it? What is working for them? What are they watching? What are they listening? What are they, how are they spending their free time? And that helps to educate me on things that I would not have visibility on. For the 60-plus-year-old people that mentor me or who influence me, it's all understanding what is keeping them going. How are they adapting? How are they getting themselves on stages? So then it's understanding how they're remaining relevant. Again, I'm just learning different things from different people, and how they can help me, again, will be very different. And that's exactly what I want. I don't want lots of people who think and act and speak the same. I want people who come at things with a very different perspective.
Absolutely. And so those relations, they are informal, or you have like formal process that you meet them regularly with the kind of mentoring sessions, or it's more in communicating to them like casually?
Sure. So it's a mixture of informal and formal. So some are informal, some are more formal. And that's simply because it depends on the mentors and the people that I have relationships with. If they're more constrained for time, then clearly we have to make that more formal. But if we naturally catch up quite often, then that's more informal because we tend to speak more often than other relationships.
All right, great. So actually here we are moving to the tips and advices, and this is for our listeners would be first tip: how to surround yourself with diverse people to get innovative ideas. So we know that building a personal brand, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and you need really to learn how to be productive, how keep your energy level on the long run. When you're a solopreneur, one-man orchestra, you juggle a lot of things in a time. So what would be your advice to our listeners to really stay efficient, focused in that journey?
Sure. So first of all, if you were to look at the average person in society today, what comes into your mind if you have to describe how they are? For many of us, we may think of them as being burnt out, exhausted, stressed, frazzled, busy. Now, this is all a reflection on the fact that we have forgotten how to take good care of our health, our relationships, and our energy. And when we have forgotten how to do those basic things, naturally, we feel like we're always busy, that there is no time to rest, that there is no time to work on the things that we have been telling ourselves for years that we would eventually work on. And so that tells me that we have forgotten how to manage our most precious asset, which is our energy. Now, when people talk about productivity, I always emphasize energy because even if you have, let's say, a 3-hour window today, so you have 3 hours that is completely free for you to use however you like it. What I find is that most people will still waste those 3 hours. You know, someone once said that time is what we want most, but we use the worst. And the reason is because we don't go into those 3 hours with the right energy. And so we just end up wasting those 3 hours. So when I look at my journey, I've begun to understand that we only are able to transform our life, our business, and our career when we understand how to transform our energy. Now, the question is, well, how do we stay energized? How do we stay efficient over the long term? And the simple matter of the fact is, it's by understanding the importance of deep focus and intentional rest. Being in a Formula One race, the car cannot last the distance without taking a pit stop. And you have got to think, how many pit stops am I taking each day just to reset, to recharge, and to rejuvenate? Because we all have a rhythm that we live by each day. And if we're not taking advantage of that rhythm, we are going to burn out at some point. And often it comes through physical illness or mental shutdown. But if we build in times of rest, times where we can recuperate, then we are able to manage our energy in such a fashion that we are able to thrive over the long term instead of just surviving. For me, that is why health is the foundation of all success. I wrote a subtitle in my book, Elena, called Stop Making Your Health a Side Hustle. And it is true, because when we think about productivity and getting things done, ironically, the first thing we look to sacrifice is our health in the form of less sleep or not eating well or not exercising. But when we cut those things out, we actually decrease our sharpness and our potential to do the things we want to do well.
Absolutely.
So for me, it begins with really asking yourself, number one, am I taking good care of my health? If not, what must change? And number two, if you're not sure how to include that in your day, simply ask yourself at the beginning of each day, how do I want to feel? How do I want to feel? Because if you want to feel energized today, you would do the activities and the things that will energize you, not drain your energy.
Fantastic. So I'm really looking forward for your book, which called Energize. And it's coming up in April of next year, right?
Correct. So it will be released by Penguin in April next year, but now available for pre-order on amazon.co.uk and Waterstones.
Fantastic. So just to close, Simon, so you've gave so many valuable advices and shared personal experience. Maybe our parting advice for someone who is starting the business, which you say is easy to start nowadays, but difficult to stand out. What may be like 3 main area of focus for them to succeed in this journey in 2021?
Sure. So to succeed in your business, and I'm going to speak from the perspective as a coach and a speaker, number 1 is to do that very thing that you would like to do. So it's as simple as that. So if you want to coach. If you're not coaching and you want to be a coach, you first got to start coaching. If you want to write. If you want to act. So you have to be doing the very thing that you want to be known for. You can't say, I want to be a coach, I'm looking for clients, but I'm not actually coaching at the moment. Which leads me to the second point, and that is, do not be afraid if you are at the very beginning of doing things for free. However, if you are doing things for free, you must be strategic about how you do it for free, because you only have so much energy each day. And if you do everything for free, you will burn out. So you've got to be strategic with how you do things for free. So let's say there is a big event that you want to speak at. You could offer yourself and say, I would love to speak there for free in exchange for a testimonial and the ability to take photos and videos so that I can use them for my content. And the third thing about how to stand out and how to make meaningful progress in your business is be inspired by others in your industry, but do not copy them. Think about what you can do that makes you unique. Think about ideas from people outside of your industry and how can you bring that into your own to stand out, because everyone these days has a limited attention span. How can you connect with them in a way that makes them curious and want to know more about you? We've shared in this episode about my love and use of voice notes.
Yeah.
What could you do that helps you stand out? How can you serve people in a way that is so different and unique that they can't help but want to find out more?
Thank you very much, Simon, for your time, for your generosity, and for sharing so many valuable pieces of information and being an example, inspiring example yourself for others. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on, Elena.